Okay, so we're going to keep going and do another example now, but we're going to find the same sort of information, but this time we're working again with a frequency table as we did before with measures of central tendency. So we've got some data set out in a frequency table, and we've been asked to find the range and the interquartile range. So again, the table format is the best way to do it, and I've already started by setting up the table that we've got here. Okay, so literally all I've done is moved the scores and the frequencies and set them up as vertical columns. So remember, our totals are what we're going to use here as well, so make sure you add them up when you're at the end. So 57. Now, cumulative frequency, so the first one's going to be 3, then it's going to be plus this, 3 plus 4 equals 7, etc. So none of this is any different than what you've done before. And the fx column, remember it's f times x, so again that's no different than what we've done before. So our first one, just to remind you, would be 7 times 3, which is 21. So just multiply across and fill in the data as you're going, because once you've done this table it makes the rest much simpler and quicker, so it's worthwhile doing. Remember to sum them up. So sum of fx equals 655, just adding all those values together. Now x squared, so it's the x term all squared, so it's literally 7 squared, the first one, etc. So keep going that way. The scores are in a pattern here, so it's likely this is going to be as well. Now we don't need the sum of this column, but it really wouldn't matter if you found that as well. But this is one you haven't seen before. So this is f times x squared, or the frequency times this x squared column. So the first one would be 3 times 49, 49 coming from here, the 3 coming from here. So that's where they came from. So go through and work all of those out as well. Okay. So just fill in all of this data. It won't take that long. Obviously you're going to have to do all of this on your calculator and get a total. The sum of fx squared, 7847. And now I'll show you why we want that stuff. So our range is still highest minus lowest. So that has not changed at all. Now our highest score that we're working with here, and this is scores, so we're not talking about the frequencies or anything like that, we're talking about the scores. So our highest score is a 16, our lowest score is a 7, so that means our range is 9. Use the x values here, is what I'm telling you. B asks us to find the interquartile range. So the interquartile range, we are going to use the sum of f column to find out if we have odd or even scores, because that's a total of all of the frequencies or the number of scores that we've got. Now we've got odd number, because we've got 57. See that? That's what we're using here. So we're going to use the n plus 1 over 4 score to find Q1. That's going to equal Q1. So let's go ahead and do that now. I feel I'm just going to put in a tiny bit more space here. Working space. Okay, so Q1 is going to be 57 plus 1 over 4, so the 14.5th score or position. So let's go find where 14.5 is likely to fall. So up to here is 13. So row 10, the 14th to the 20th scores lie in that row. So that's the one we're going to be looking for. It doesn't matter that it's a 13.5. Well, it does matter actually. So the 13th is in here, the 14th is in the next one. So we're actually going to have to add them together to find the average here. No, sorry, that was wrong. I was right the first time. 14.5 falls in here. 14.5 is somewhere in there. So that means in this case we want 10. Sorry, that was confusing. So Q3 is the 14.5th position from the end. Now, to find that, when you've got something like this, you take the total of the values that you've got, scores, 57 in this case, and you only want to take away 13.5. One less than the Q1 position. Now, the reason we take away one less is because if we take away 14.5, we're actually going to take away the value that we want as well. So you take away one less than that and it will leave it there for you. So that means we want 43.5th position. That's what we're looking for here. So let's go back up to our frequency. So up to here is 43 and in here is 44 to 51. Now this time 43.5 falls somewhere between them. So we are going to have to work out an average here. So in this case, it's going to be in row 13 and maybe in row 14. So we need to work out the average between the two. So 13.5 here. And don't forget to actually work out the interquartile range. Please make sure you write the formula. 13.5 minus 10, which equals 3.5. Now, if you're a little bit confused, please ask me about this in class. That's quite normal at this point, but once you've got it, it will be okay. Now, it's really important that you practice how to do this on your graphics calculator. So, practice how to do this. If you don't have a graphics calculator, you really need to get one because it's going to be required in the exam. It's on your book list anyway. You should have all had one by now. And if you leave it to the last minute and don't get it until the exam, it's going to make it very hard for you to do it that way. There are questions that require it in the exam. So the text on page 330 has this information. More details, if needed, are in there. Now this calculator is the older model, but the steps that you use should be exactly the same. So the FX9860G is the model that used to be used. This year we've got the new color calculators if you've got a new one, but I know a lot of you also still have old ones from brothers and sisters, etc., and that's perfectly fine. So follow these steps. Please practice. Please see me if you have any questions, and I'm just going to quickly go through how to do this as well. So these are the answers that you're looking for. So using a graphics calculator, find the range, interquartile range, standard deviation of the following sets of data. Now we've got some individual data in A and we've got some group data in B. So for the individual data, for all of them, you want the stat mode on your calculator. Once you're in that, you need to enter data as you did before. So you should have already practiced this before this point. If not, make sure you do it now. You want to hit the F2 button, which says calc underneath it. You want to hit the F6 button, which says set underneath it. Then you're going to get something on your screen that looks like 1 var x list. You want that to say list 1, and if it doesn't, you need to change it to that. Then you're going to have something that says 1 var frequency. You want that to say 1, not list 1 or anything else, 1. So if it doesn't, you need to change it, and if you can't figure out how, you need to see me. Then hit exit to get out of there. You want to choose 1, the number 1 variable. You want that to say F1. Now, this is what they should say. So the standard deviations should say 4.0296. That's the standard deviation. And if we look back up on the printout, that's this one here, standard deviation. So you can see on your calculator, this is what you are looking for, and you need to get used to that. The minimum says x equal to 3, and the maximum x equals to 18. So it doesn't tell you range, but it tells you here your minimum value and your maximum value, which means you can easily go and work out the range. So it tells you your highest and your lowest score. So you work out the range yourself. So the range is 18 minus 3, which equals 15. Now, it tells you Q1 and Q3. So in this case, Q1 equals 5, Q3 equals 11. So that means you can work out your interquartile range as well. So that again is something you need to do. And your standard deviation, you should round that answer that we've got up here. So round. So it's going to be approximate to 4.03. So if there's any problems there, you are going to need to come and see me and work through them together. Now B has data as well, but it's frequency table data here. So a lot of it is exactly the same, but when you get to this part, it's going to be different. You need two lists. One var X list needs to say list 1, and one var frequency needs to say list 2. What you're doing by putting that in there is telling it there's two lists of data that need to be calculated together. So it's going to be different, and what you should get for that data is these answers. So standard deviation 23154, you should get a minimum of x of 22, you should get a maximum of x for 31, you should get a Q1 for 24.5, a Q3 for 28, range 31 to 22. You should get an IQR after you've done your calculations of 3.5, and your standard deviation you're going to round to 2.32. So if you can't get any of that on your calculator with this data, it's really important you stop at this point and come and see me so I can help you. So please don't leave it until the last minute to practice for the exam. It's going to be hard if you do that, and it's going to make it easier as you go through if you practice that now. So any questions, please see me in class.